Hello, everybody, and welcome to Idea Farm. I'm your host, Horacio Jones, and today I have with me Nathan White. How's it going, Nathan?
It's going great.
Thanks for joining us again on Idea Farm.
Yeah.
I believe you were here a couple of years ago, weren't you? When
We
doing
were.
Streaming Sundays?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool, and Fernando introduced us.
That's right. Yeah, we talked about a couple different projects at Cesar Chavez Park that we've been looking at and trying to participate on behalf of the community and kind of some of our early stages for restoration at a binational scale.
That's right. Yeah, and that's back when it was Streaming Sundays, which was just like a cool little show. I had people come in and talk about their things, and now we've developed into Idea Farm, which is a show about people with big ideas, big thinkers, entrepreneurs like yourself, and we want to hear what makes you tick, what ideas you have, and stuff like that.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.
Got lots of those.
He's got
That's
lots
what
of
I
big
have
ideas
more
for the
than
environment.
anything.
Yeah, it seems to be a lot of things going on with the environment. I mean, Bezos just had something going on, didn't he?
I saw that. Yeah, they just released a $10 billion environmental dedication fund that's going to be happening later this summer. So that's very interesting from an entrepreneurial standpoint and a way to invest in the community and invest in kind of the ecological systems that start with restoration.
Yeah, it makes me feel okay to buy Amazon now.
Right? A little bit. Maybe that's
job,
the
Jeff.
pitch.
Yeah, right.
Right.
But yeah, tell us about what you're doing nowadays. You went from working on something in San Diego Bay to something bigger in the Laguna Salada and Salton Sea area, right?
Right. Yeah. So, and it's not really a divergence. It's more just a different scale. So what we've kind of established is a way to look at systems and that systems-based approach and how that can scale to different site opportunities. There's just different variations of plant species or a different variation of the technology and what quantity that you'd be using it at. So yeah, in San Diego area, at Cesar Chavez Park, there's a way to implement seawater grass and ornamental landscapes as a way to educate people and bring children and youth out to the area to have kind of a demonstration garden. And we hope that that can happen in Mission Bay as well and different places where that scale is kind of applicable to bringing people to the community. But expanding beyond that, looking at those systems at a larger scale has been a primary focus for us for the last 3 years. Working with the state of California to try and help them with some information on restoration of the Salton Sea.
Awesome. And what's been the state of California's take on it? Have they been helpful or?
So it's interesting. I went to several long-range planning committee meetings that is focused on 10 years and then the 10 years after the 10-year plan. And it was part of our recommendation to look at seawater import as a viable solution to the Salton Sea restoration because there is a water transfer that took effect, which is going to reduce the shoreline of an already receded Salton Sea. And there's a lot of toxic dust in the sediment under the Salton Sea waters. So without seawater import, it's almost impossible to restore that kind of hazardous situation. The current projections are that it might recede 70 to 80% of the shoreline over the course of the next 30, 40, and 50 years. So if there's that kind of reduction, it becomes hazardous levels of air quality for San Diego, Los Angeles, Mexicali. So they're receptive. We had to ask and request the RFI, RFP, and RFQs open up, and we submitted to those. There was a little bit of bias in the selection process. There were 3 companies that were selected, so they're kind of recalibrating and coming back to opening up that RFI process again, and we'll resubmit in the next month or so.
Cool. Well, let's take a step back, though. As I think a lot of people probably don't know too much about the Salton Sea. I certainly didn't until I met you.
Yeah.
I remember when we were coming back from vacation last year, we were driving down whatever that freeway is. We saw this sign about Salton Sea Shores or something like that. And we took off and off the freeway and went down there. And I was kind of surprised how like barren and abandoned it looked. And then I was like, well, I'm gonna put my feet in the Salton Sea. So I was wearing flip-flops and I walked on down there and it started smelling really bad. Didn't think anything of it. Kept on walking towards the sea, and then I started sinking like I was in, a mud hole or something.
Right. And you're waiting for the sea creatures to come out and get you, right?
Yeah, dude. And I got to struggle to pull my feet out. and I ended up leaving my chocolates there.
Oh, man.
But I wasn't the only one because there were like 4 or 5 other bears there.
Right.
So what on earth happened to the Salton Sea?
That's a good question. It was actually the Lake Cahuilla is the traditional Salton Sea, and that is thousands of years old. So what happens when the ice age melts, all of that sea level rise occurred. So that entire region of Lake Cahuilla was the Salton Sea, Laguna Salada, Mexicali, and Imperial County was all underwater, all the way up to Palm Springs area and Coachella Valley. So as
How long ago was that?
thousands of years ago, right? There's still remnants on the hillside where you can see the stained water levels. But more recently, historically, in 1904 and 05, there was a breach of the Colorado River levee system. So that started flowing down uncontrolled into the Salton Sea that resulted in the historic shoreline that we see there, close to there today. So that lasted for a few years, water flowing down into the sea to fill up that water basin, or that dry basin at that time. So working its way backward, 1950s, 1960s, that was the Hollywood hangout for a lot of Hollywood echelons, movie stars, actors. That was kind of their
It
playground.
looked like it was that kind of place, and I heard people even like surf there and stuff.
Surf, water ski, a lot of that kind of activity, a lot of boating activity, jet boats, things like that. But then there was a larger flood that occurred, and that destroyed a lot of the homes in the area. And then ever since then, it's kind of been an uphill battle of heavy smells due to agricultural runoff, a lot of sediments, and now more recently the QSA, which is reducing the level of the Salton Sea and bringing it down 5 or 10 feet. And that obviously is not conducive to people wanting to come visit. You have to walk out farther. You have to go into, like your experience, into the heavy sediment, which is kind of muck. And it has that stench to it, which is due to some of the nutrients.
Do you think I got like some kind of heavy metals in my skin or something?
No, that's kind of the misconception that there is contamination beyond that. It is I believe, a Class A recreation.
Oh, really?
But it is designated as an agricultural sump. So you can kind of see it's not a lake, it's not a sea. From,
It's a sump.
from the federal designation that it's an agricultural sump, which allows people to discharge agricultural runoff unabated and untested into the Salton Sea. Obviously, Mexico, the New River and the Alamo River contribute a lot of nutrients and effluent wastewater that goes in there, but there's a lot of agriculture, cow farms that add nutrients and pollution to the sea as well.
And are there any places that are still viable to like develop or be used for recreation?
Yeah. Well, the Salton Sea
the
itself, it's the viability is contingent on restoration. It's not viable if there isn't a restoration plan that's solid, that has any footing, because people look when they're investing in property in a 10, 20, and 30-year time scale. If they're seeing that the state's 10-year plan is 5 years behind schedule, they see that that investment isn't going to mature for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So the contingency of its viability is dependent on its restoration plan.
I see, and you have a pretty cool restoration plan that involves not only the Salton Sea, but Laguna Salada just further south.
Right.
Let's let people take a look at the map here so that they know what we're talking about here. Are we back there? Nope, no map. Uh-oh. Let's see, what happened to the map? I think I have to put this computer back online.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of describe that. The reason why we selected or have been looking at the viability of Laguna Salada is because it is a natural depression in the same way the Salton Sea is. Around the world, there's areas where it's very easy to flood an inland sea, a natural depression, because of the proximity to sea level. So this happens to be a location which was naturally flooded 1984, 1990s. Colorado River water had flowed into Laguna Salada strategically through the Coyote Canal. So it was already a flooded basin, and it was used as a fishing habitat, and it's the tribal community of the Cocopah fishing grounds. So their history back through time, even to the times of Lake Cahuilla, they were using it as fishing habitat. That hasn't occurred in the last 15, 20 years, but that's an opportunity where we can implement a low-cost solution that has double the benefit of restoration of the Salton Sea alone. And a dramatic cost savings. That's the real interesting part is A lot of the other proposals talk about piping water from the Sea of Cortez down to the Salton Sea, or the Pacific Ocean down to the Salton Sea. And pipelines are very expensive and very energy intensive. So being able to use a lake to convey water doubles the benefit and reduces the cost by half. So it's kind of two for the price of one.
Okay, cool. We got the map back up. Let's see if
All
we
right.
can go to that. Make that hot. There it is. Cool. So yeah, why don't you just guide us on the Salton Sea and Laguna Salada?
So you can kind of see to the bottom right there, that's the Sea of Cortez. So if we look at this area, backing up a little bit, if we look at this region, this is the Sea of Cortez, the northern Gulf of California, which is vast in its size. And then we have the environmental preserve here. And this is kind of a biosphere of the delta in the Colorado River. So this is a very interesting area where you have the vaquita, which is the endangered dolphins that use this area as their habitat. And you also have the totoaba, which is a very sought after fish species that they use parts of it. So this becomes the area that we would preserve 100%, or hopefully enhance to 110 or 150% over time. But there's already a conveyance system that leads through the Coyote Canal. If we zoom in here, there's an existing infrastructure that connects to this area. And you can see over here, this whole area floods in high tide. This is one of the areas around the world that has the highest high tide of, I believe it's 6 meters in certain instances, so about 22 feet or so. So this entire region would flood, and our hope is that we can retain some of that water and let it flow back into Laguna Salada. So if we're looking at this area, we wouldn't inhibit any of the preserve. We would hope to enhance that, and then we would just direct water with the existing infrastructure of the Coyote Canal, widen it and deepen it to start the restoration efforts. You can kind of see highlighted in green some of the opportunities for saltwater tolerant landscapes and ornamental landscapes, but also some farming systems that we might be able to implement with some of our industrial partners. But if we scale back, you can kind of see this area is about 125 to 175,000 acres of new wetland habitat for Mexico. But it also has that opportunity of recreation and renewable energy generation.
Okay, so can you go down there right now and just
Yeah,
camp
it's
out on a beach
accessible.
or something?
Yeah, well, there isn't a beach right now. It's an empty, dry lake bed, but there is freeway access, and you can come out here.
Oh, I thought because it was blue that it was. There was
Yeah,
water
no,
in
that's
it.
my overlay.
Oh, okay.
But funny enough, if our anybody that's watching goes onto any map, any global map, any map of the United States, you actually see that shows water in that area. So this has been dry for about 20 years now, but most maps show it as Laguna Salada being water.
I see. And then your plan is to, am I right, eventually connect the Salton Sea to Laguna Salada somehow?
That's right. Yeah. So
Let's check that out on
as
the
we
map.
discussed before, the cheaper way to connect this is using the existing infrastructure of the Coyote Canal. You widen it and deepen it to make sure that you have water flowing into Laguna Salada. And then to keep that salinity level and that habitat stable, you would recirculate some water back around to these agricultural farms and back down into the Sea of Cortez. But as we move beyond that, we're saving a lot of cost and not needing to pipe or channel water down to the northern tip of Laguna Salada, which comes to about 7 miles between the U.S.-Mexico border. So we're bringing ocean water to about 7 to 10 miles of the United States and Mexico. But as we go down through that, we can either pump over the Eagle Mountain, or we can dig a tunnel through it. I've started to reach out to the Boring Company, SpaceX's splinter company, to see if they might be interested in a collaboration to lease some of their property.
boring.
But yeah, so boring. But basically the intent is there's about a 7 mile range that's about 60 meters high, so about 150 feet at the high point, and that would be the only hurdle to bring gravity-fed water down to the Salton Sea. So
And it's all downhill.
downhill from the
Okay.
U.S.-Mexico border, a little over it, you're basically going down negative 235 feet. So there's a lot of opportunity to generate renewable energy on its coast down that hill. once it meets the Salton Sea. So you can kind of see here some of the projects. If you visit our website, we have this as an interactive map that everybody can see any of our live updates. You can select on some of these pins or these highlighted areas to get more information. It's still very much in process, but we're able to just put a little bit of information in here that we can make public. You can kind of see some of these areas in green around the borders of the sea that could be agricultural farming, making biofuel and food with ocean water. Some of our industrial partners work on that, and they would kind of fit in to being able to make these food and fuel systems.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really grandiose project. How much do you think something like that would cost?
The estimates right now, so the cost of inaction is about $77 billion. If you don't do anything with the Salton Sea and it dries to what the state's 10-year plan might be of the reduction, it might cost $77 billion for health, life, safety, for property values. I'm sure they took into consideration Coachella and the PGA golf tournaments that might be negatively affected.
The environment would become so bad that you couldn't even have a Coachella there?
The dust storms that would happen in that area would become toxic almost. It is at that level now because the dust particles are so small, but it would contain all of those agricultural chemicals for the past 100 years that are detrimental and cause cancer. So they would go into your bloodstream and inhale them, which is no bueno.
Well, God forbid they don't have a Coachella.
I know, right?
Come on, let's get on it.
Well, I mean,
our
thought was in the course of working with different organizations to have an environmental kind of music festival. And I know a lot of different actors and musicians are looking at the same thing, having environmentally charged music festivals where that could actually go towards direct investment in restoration.
So you're saying inaction would cost about $77 billion.
Oh, right. I didn't answer your question. Right? So, the implementation cost is around 1.5, potentially to the higher marker of about $2 billion. And that's with systems where you use dredges. And you can keep adding on to the system over time where you'd have these dredges that are purchased, where you can build recreational islands within the sea that can reduce some of the wake and also create more places of habitat, as well as cleaning the water with some special plants.
So did you say $2 billion?
1.5 to about $2 billion at the high mark.
Versus 70 billion?
Versus the comparative projects that are 3.5 up to $8 billion for restoration. But, and that's the real interesting part about our proposed project, is those do not include flooding and restoring Laguna Salada. So those have half the benefit that our proposed project would work within. We're creating Laguna Salada and a restored Salton Sea for about half the price of most of the other projects. So in a cost competitive or a cost analysis, it's about a quarter of the cost of most competitors that are looking at pipelining. The main reason why we think that this is most beneficial for our purposes, looking to what's going to help Mexico the most. So looking at how projects can assist Mexico's efforts, this one adds the most benefit. All the other ones would pipe water from the Sea of Cortez across Mexico to the Salton Sea. And some actually propose dumping water back into the ocean. All of that salt water or all that nutrient-rich water, putting it back into that biosphere. So that's definitely not a direction that we would want to go in.
And I know you're in talks with Mexican officials about Laguna Salada. I think you even have an event coming up there, right?
We do. We have an event coming up on March 5th at the Polytechnic University. Several administrators and boards of supervisors are organizing that event and putting that on so that we can share those particular ideas and have kind of a community-led workshop. So having a workshop allows people to come in and bring their ideas into the process so that we're inclusive and we're not excluding any particular entity. Excellent.
I'm trying to bring that up. Oh, okay, here it is right here. So if you guys are interested, you can just go to the AGESS Facebook page, AGESS.
Yep. Aegis Inc. It's one of our events that are coming up. This one's going to be on March 5th. It's going to be open to the public. Space is limited. We've sold or given away about 75-80% of the tickets. It's kind of limited. There was 100 seats available, and most of those have filled up pretty quickly. We're doing this as a free event, so we're not charging admission. And we're excited to kind of give that message to the public and take their feedback. also inviting different political officials into the discussion.
Excellent. Is there a little movie here we can play?
Yeah, there's a little video clip if you want to click on that, and then you can enlarge that. Basically looking at the start of the Sea of Cortez.
Is there audio?
There should be some music in there, but maybe, I don't know, it might be linked. Oh, right, this is a link through the Facebook post. So the direct link is on our website, and it's also on the YouTube channel. So you can go check out the YouTube channel. Just looking at this as an alternative, the current Coyote Canal is about 100 feet wide and about 30 feet deep. But what we're showing on the screen here is an opportunity to create more of a recreational habitat where you have kind of like the river in Arizona where people come and use it for boat recreation, but it also has those enhanced landscapes and the seawater farming operations around it. So it becomes not just a way to convey water, but more of a way to bring water there and have a second or third benefit to its use.
And what are we seeing now? Just kind of talk us
So
through.
looking through the beaches that can be created, this is all land that's barren right now, but you can have housing, commercial, residential along its shores, but also you can have these habitat and these mangrove forests. So you're looking at a massive carbon sink as well with all the plants that are going to be around this area. If this is 150 or 200,000 acre habitat, the shores could be mangrove forests if there are non-invasive species, and you could put a lot of the carbon that's in the atmosphere down into the soil. Same with the seawater farms. You take it from the atmosphere and carbon can be put back into the soil and you can harvest your plants. So looking at this is kind of a concept of having boat recreation that can be globally connected to the Salton Sea through a conveyance system, which is gravity fed down to the Salton Sea. We might go with a piping solution, or we might do this eventually, or go with the tunnel, as we mentioned, hopefully crossing the U.S.-Mexico border via boat conveyance, right?
You have to like lift your boat up over the wall, and dump it back down to the United States.
Well, hopefully we either take down the wall or build a new wall, right? Something that's more inclusive, something that builds bridges as opposed to barriers.
For sure. Just make it fun.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing about that is like that might never happen, or it might be a 20-year add-on project that happens. And that's what I really like about this. We're just doing infrastructure that brings water to this particular place, but the add-ons come over the next 30, 40, 50, 100 years of houses being developed or new industries being developed. Right. And that becomes one of them, right? Crossing the border in a boat. Is an add-on option that might not happen for 50 years, but it could happen eventually.
Yeah, it could be quite an adventurous trip.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you invested now in some of the parcels of land that I see there, you could probably have a pretty good nest egg after.
Well, those are going about $5,000 per lot, so you can look into an investment of $100 a month and have quite a few properties.
Possible, very possible. One of the things that I thought was cool when we were talking about this earlier was that you mentioned that because of all the new water being there, that it would create some sort of system where the water would evaporate and go back north towards Colorado and feed the Colorado River and make this kind of cycle. Yeah. Right?
So that goes back to our elementary school education, and I had to be re-educated, but if we see what that looks like, the Sea of Cortez right now evaporates a lot of water and is conveyed through the monsoon cycles. So during the summer, in July and August, you have these monsoons that happen in New Mexico and Arizona, and those are specifically caused by this system, which is water that's at that heat temperature where it can break through the inversion layer, and that can convey water and drop down in the Colorado River Rockies. So we hope, and we're studying it right now with scientists, to look at this to figure out if it has a beneficial results in affecting that system. We're also looking at what would happen if you have 70% reduction in the sea surface of the Salton Sea. Would that have a negative effect on the whole Colorado River Delta system, which would justify, again, it might be more than $77 billion of negative effects. It might be $1 trillion if you're taking all of the water away from San Diego, Los Angeles, Coachella Valley. There might be a much larger impact of inaction.
Very good point.
But the opportunities are maybe we can create a surplus of 2 million acre feet a year, and what is that value to the state of California to have a dependable water resource?
Right, and that's a great opportunity for Mexico and the U.S. to work together on a very good thing. Water.
Right.
It's pretty scarce out in that part of the world, I think.
Well, and that is kind of our overall goal in talking, and that'll be kind of our request when resubmitting back to the state of California, is to meet the treaties that we have already signed on to deliver our full amount of water resources to Mexico. The Colorado River Delta system is going dry right now. There's not fresh water hitting the Sea of Cortez. So that is our eventual goal in justification of this type of project, is that we should be delivering the full amount of water to Mexico so that they do have this estuary that can survive in the long term.
Nathan, I want to ask you, how did you get interested in the Salton Sea environmental restoration of it?
The Salton Sea itself, I grew up in Cathedral City, but I had never heard about it until I was in college. For me, it's more the climate emergency that we have right now. We have a situation that is out of control. It's really these negative feed loopback cycles are having compounding effects every day that goes by where we're not turning off the flow of carbon in the atmosphere and methane. The inaction of that kind of called me to be more involved in economic and environmental restoration. And the Salton Sea was a very interesting place where the same thing has occurred over the past 60 years. Inaction by federal governments, the loss and the abuse of administrative funds, where not one shovel has hit the soil yet, and there's been hundreds of millions of dollars spent. For us, we can get projects on the ground very quickly, and a project like this could be a regional template for global restorations when we do it similar ways around the world. But the Salton Sea itself is a testing platform. It's a place where it has very poor water quality, so if we can find scientific ways to mitigate the high salinity, the high nutrients, and use that as a template. You can go to India and China and lots of other places around the world, like Australia. We see their really hot fire seasons. Could a flooding of a depression or a project like this result in less intensive fire seasons while we have a way to balance out?
And I think you mentioned that there are other parts of the world. Let's see if we can get that on the map where they've actually kind of done something like this.
Yeah, so we're looking at, well,
check
we
it out.
just have kind of an overlay that we're proposing right now of places in Africa. We had a couple interested parties that were looking at a collaboration opportunity. So we started looking, we have the Katara Depression, which has been studied for a long time by many different folks. Let's see, zoom in there. So this is the Katara Depression. It is west of Egypt. You can see the Egypt Valley here in Cairo, but there's an area where it's lower than sea level. So there's an opportunity to bring water from the ocean down into this depression, and then highlighted in green here, you might be able to create those same seawater farms or seawater landscape opportunities that has a cooling effect on the region. This particular project at the Katara isn't really the same as Laguna Salada or this other project that we have, because it doesn't have a mountain range where the wind would blow. All of the wind patterns take it out to sea.
It's just flat.
It doesn't drop it on the mountains, but it does have a microclimate situation where this area north can be cooler, and you can have a new economy that makes this food and biofuel with the farming from these seawater operations. So going just a little farther south is one that's very similar to Laguna Salada restoration, which is the Danakil Depression, and that is in between Djibouti and Eritrea. You have an opportunity where you can bring ocean water, and they have these chain islands, and then you have Saudi Arabia off here to the right. You have these wind patterns that are very hot, bringing in air across the Danakil, which is one of the hottest places on the earth. But if it's full of ocean water, you have a lot more evaporation that can transmit water out into the East African plains, and hopefully reduce desertification in the Sudan, right? Adding more water and more carbon sequestration as a way to create the green wall that people
it looks
are
like
working
there's
on.
a lot of water here. What happens to that water?
A lot of that is what creates the situations that we have right now, but a lot of that isn't coming from this very specific region, right? The very specific region of Djibouti and Eritrea has the wind. There's mountain ranges that are along the western shore of Saudi Arabia that block a lot of that wind, so it funnels down over Yemen Yemen's a different conversation in Saudi Arabia. We won't get into politics right now, but there's ways that these restoration projects could happen in Yemen and Saudi Arabia too, where you have the seawater farming and ornamental landscapes that create a cooler microclimate. But yes, a lot of that's driven over the Denekil Depression, but the mountain ranges block it from evaporating over the Red Sea and transmitting over to Sudan. So this is a very specific region that becomes very easily adaptable to sequester a lot of water and carbon.
Oh, look, who just joined us? It's Governor Newsom. Hey, Governor Newsom. What do you have to say to Governor Newsom?
Well, I want to thank you very much. If you are on the line of all the work that you're doing, there's a lot. Oh, well, yeah. Well, he might be listening, or at least if Arturo Delgado's
hey,
online.
in case you guys are listening, listen to Nathan.
I think restoration opportunities is just a cost-benefit analysis. I did my bachelor's and my master's in architecture and real estate development. If you look at environmental systems, it's the same cost-benefit analysis. If you don't do anything, you don't have a profit margin. If you do something, you can have a positive effect from an environmental standpoint, but also from a return on investment standpoint. So we're just trying to give the state information, and we're trying to take this message globally because it does take investment like Mr. Bezos is going to do, but it takes much more diverse and much more direct action. And we really do have to turn off the flow of carbon and methane into the atmosphere. You can't take incremental steps.
And I think that's the case for the whole worldwide climate crisis. It's going to cost us a lot more to not do anything than to actually fix it, right?
Trillions and trillions of dollars. My brother
And
works.
lives,
My
yeah.
brother works in FEMA. He's seeing that right now in the Midwest. Everything's flooded. There's no real path forward for reducing those kind of catastrophes. It does take, and I think there's a projection like $368 billion it would take to fix the climate issue, right? The climate emergency that we have right now, around $670 billion. Compare that to the cost of inaction being in the trillions of dollars. It's a great investment. I don't know why Enron and BP and all these people aren't investing in renewables, because it's a good economic platform. It doesn't have as much maintenance. It's free. It's available. I mean, to me, it's kind of just...
The windmills like kill the birds, or they're bad for your
Right.
brain or something like that, right?
They cause cancer.
Yeah, they cause cancer, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's just a matter of strategic approaches and partnerships. That's what we're hoping to do. Regional partnerships, binational partnerships, where we're working for and by the community. That's a little bit different than the administration costs.
Speaking of the community, what can people out there who are watching or interested in climate change and helping that out, what can they do to help affect things?
I think there's a lot happening with campaigns right now to work on legislation. For me, we kind of take a systems-based approach and a solutions-based approach, and we need a lot of help. So if you're interested, you can join our team at agesinc.com. But a lot of people are going in the right direction. It takes a mass movement of people demanding that there be action and demanding there be legislation. I hope that we have a bill soon that ends fossil fuel subsidies and reinvests that in renewables. If we could get that done, that is the first step in ending corporate handouts and basically keeping fossil fuel companies alive, when that's not really what capitalism is all about, right? It should be competitive, where they should have to compete with a renewable energy project like ours, but they're getting free handouts.
Of course they are.
They got money to ask for free handouts. So,
buddies, they're in the club.
The people that are doing the most action right now are the youth, right? You see children out having climate strikes and walking out of school, because it does take that level of civil disobedience and civil action, nonviolent action, to really affect. And you might be familiar with what's happening in Canada with the tribal nations there opposing the pipelines that are going through tribal nations.
Oh yeah, just like in
The
America, yeah.
Wet'suwet'en tribal nations. That's what happened at Standing Rock, and that's the current trend of Extinction Rebellion. That is having an effect in demanding and forcing there to be meaningful action. It's unfortunate that it has to come to that, right? There's been 20 or 30 years of politely asking, and that just does not get the result. So sometimes demanding it is the way to go. But you can join our team. We're always looking at volunteers. It's a party of 10 right now. We're hopefully building an army.
We'll put that information in the comments section, so you
Yeah.
guys can check out Aegis Inc. afterwards.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for joining us. We're almost out of time, but I always like to end Idea Farm by asking our guests, what are some ways that you cultivate your ideas? What keeps you going to be able to? Because I know it's hard what you do. You're not getting a lot of support, but what keeps you up at night? What keeps you going? And how can your techniques help others who may be in a similar position?
Sure. I think that's a great question. I think what I've come to realize is that action happens and you can see the results of your action so long as you don't give up. If you give up, those results will never occur. But if you keep moving forward in a positive way, those results will happen. It just takes your determination. So that's what keeps me motivated, is that so long as there's somebody working towards that end goal, whether it's Laguna Salada restoration or the Salton Sea or this global climate restoration, if everybody starts walking in that direction, we could get there so much faster. And that's the result that you see in these political campaigns too. $1 donation from everybody in the United States, we would have $393 million on the first day. Right, $1 from every person, we can fix these type of global climate emergencies in a year, right? If it's strategically funded and it's not wasted in administration. So what keeps me up is that we can all have a positive impact so long as we keep hope alive and we keep our dreams alive.
$1 from every person on Facebook.
Right? We could fund it tomorrow, right?
Yes. So we're taking donations here at Idea Farm. No, but seriously, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Yeah,
it's been a
really
pleasure.
good meeting you and talking again, and hopefully we can have another conversation soon.
Yeah, I'm going to go down to that Laguna Salada event and check that out with you guys.
Yep.
And help you out on Earth Day. I think you're doing something too, right?
Yeah, we're going to have an Earth Day meeting. This is our 4th annual Earth Day event at Desert Shores. We're working with the state of California again to restore some boat keys at Desert Shores. There's about 240 parcels. We're trying to build a berm and flood that as the first demonstration environmental project on the ground. And hopefully Imperial County and the state can get that off the ground soon.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And I know you've been doing some work with one of the local candidates for, was it Region 78?
It's State Assembly in the 78th District, Micah Perlin. Mm-hmm.
Right. We have a video of a conversation that you had with him about the same topic queued up. So we're going to end with that.
Perfect.
Guys, you've been with Horacio Jones and Nathan White talking about the environment today. Thank you so much for joining us on Idea Farm. We'll be back next month with somebody even cooler, if it's possible.
If it's possible.
If it's possible. Okay.
Thanks so much.
Let me cue up this video and we will see